Cassandra Clare is a very polarizing figure in young adult literature. I know she's infamous for her Harry Potter trilogy and supposedly the plagiarism that went on there, and also later just recycling the ideas and themes of that fanfiction series onto her City of Bones series, which I can honestly say I've never read. Pretty much because of Stephanie Meyer's comments when she compared it to Wicked Lovely. It just really turned me off that what was said to endorse the books, that I never really gave the books a chance, which is more my fault than Cassandra Clare's. And I've heard many people love her work, many people hate her work, and that being said, I never really wanted to read the City of Bones series. The cover, nothing really about it really stood out for me. But when Clockwork Angel was announced, that kind of attracted me. I already like, whenever I see anything that says Clockwork and I think of Clockwork Orange, and that always piques my interest, and although I never thought it would ever be compared to Clockwork Orange or anything having to do with the same topic, it sounded interesting, so I was eventually going to check it out, but I was never going to buy it. Fortunately, one of my good friends here, Linda, ordered the book because she's a big fan of Cassandra Clare's. So I decided, alright, perfect opportunity. I will read it. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this book. You know, the first thing that really pulled me into the series was the mythology, the history of the Institute and how the Shadow Hunters operate, how the Nymphalum came to be, etc. And like the backstory of the characters really made me enjoy the story from the beginning. And I was really surprised because I didn't expect it wasn't as in-depth as other series have gone, but it was more in-depth than a lot of series have gone thus far. So I was really surprised to see how much effort seemed to go into her work. If she happened to be recycling this, I did not know. So, and if this is linked, or if some of the story ideas are recycled from her other work, I have no knowledge of this, so I can't judge it based on that. I can only judge based on what I've read. I really enjoyed the character histories of the different characters. We have, like, the character Tessa, who is our main female protagonist, who is a shapeshifter, which is rare in this world for some reason, which is kind of ironic to me because usually the most common powers are like telekinesis and shapeshifting. But in this world it's supposedly rare, and she was kidnapped by two warlocks where she learned about her power and how to use it. And in the beginning you're being exposed to how she's been trained to do this, and it's just kind of traumatizing. And you're just kind of like, wow, this girl is really going through some difficult shit already. It's only the first few pages. And so that already gave me a good image of her to be able to stand strong throughout those kind of things. And I always like it when they're not afraid to put their female character in the nitty-gritty, because a lot of the time the female character is an observer, not an actual, included member in the events, and Tessa was, so I really like that character. She is rescued by Will, who easily can come up as the Draco character. And because I know how fanfiction writers write Draco, because I read a lot of Draco-centric fanfiction, I definitely see how her influence in the Draco character has been done in this book with the character Will. He's very much like Draco in the way, like, his dialogue is. The way the Draco in Letterpan's stereotype is, this is definitely where it came from. I know he's a misfit that's filled with all kinds of snark, has a comeback for every occasion, and it's like, I find him infuriating. Like, the first time I started reading about his character, I'm like, oh my god, you're a total and complete douchebag. But then as I started reading more about him, he makes me laugh sometimes with his douchebaggy comments, so then I started to like his character. So that must mean I'm in love with him, because I'm going so back and forth with his character. By the way, why is Will such a popular name now? I've read about 4 books where the main lead character was Will, and I'm just like, is Will Smith making a comeback or something? I don't know why this is such a popular name. Anyway, moving on. Then we also have Charlotte, Jem, who is male, and by his character description sounds extremely delicious. Henry, Sophia, Thomas, and other secondary characters, and they all have some sort of backstory to add to the cast. They're not just there really to be fodder. They really do add something, whether it be their personalities or their traits, but they all kind of bring you into the story. It's all part of this one massive world, and I really enjoyed that, because a lot of times you have secondary characters that don't do anything, or just don't have secondary characters at all. And basically the plot of the book revolves around 2 mysteries that that involves finding out what happened to Tessa's brother, Nate, and figuring out who the Magister is. And the Magister is the man who planned Tessa's kidnap to marry her, or some kind of supposedly idea. It escapes me because I haven't read it in a bit. And the journey is full of a lot of twists and turns, and I didn't expect all of them. Some I did, some I didn't. But it was a very character-driven story, so even though the plot is important, really it's the characterization that is important. And how she developed them, and how the plot works around them. And I like that. I like that even though it wasn't very plot-centric, it did use the characters to drive the plot. And I enjoyed that quality of it. I really enjoyed the book, and I liked the writing style. That being said, what really brought it down for me was the relationship between Will and Tessa, because they were fun with their snarkiness, and I enjoyed it, but I also felt like it brought down their personalities. Like, they have this kind of, like, Will has this kind of snarkiness, kind of suave bola kind of thing going on, and when he starts falling in love with Tessa so instantaneously, he loses that fun about him. And I kind of always dislike that, how when a male character is supposed to be like snarky and badass, he loses that as soon as he starts to fall in love. And I think that's the reason why I've never really been a fan of most, immediate bad boy couples with the bad girl, when the only real appeal is his snarkiness, because there are only a few exceptions where that's happened and the character still remains, at least personality-wise, a badass. Will does not retain that badass personality when he's with Tessa, which I feel weakens his character. And I feel if your character becomes weaker because of a relationship, that relationship is not healthy for that character. But overall, I really didn't have much of a problem with this book. I will probably read the next two. I probably won't read City of Bones. I really have no interest to read it, although I know it kind of connects with this series. I just don't care enough. I've never been interested in it, and I've heard a lot of negative stuff about it, even though that's biased. But I just don't really care enough to actually try this book. But I am glad I read this one. And I will give it a B+. There were some things that I felt were kind of like, meh, it dragged down a little bit on certain parts, but overall it was really good. The relationship really drastically altered their personalities to the point where I was just like, this is one of the central focuses of this book, and I'm not really that into it. But I gave it a B+ because I really felt it was a good start of something else, and I really want to see what happens more. So it was my first experience with Cassandra Clare's work, this book, and I enjoyed it. Does it mean I respect her as a writer? I really don't know, because I haven't read that much of her work to really define, but if I'm just going by what people have told me about her actions and what she's done with plagiarism, to me she's like the Philippa Gregory of young adult. Her work isn't fantastic, but her writing and her prose is decent. I read about how she handled the plagiarism issue, and all I have to say is that was immature. But I liked the book, and I'm sorry if you guys are expecting me to bash it, because I know sometimes people think, oh, she probably wouldn't like this book. But I really did enjoy this book series. For those of you, however, if any of you dislike the book, I want to read a negative review of it. One of my friends on Goodreads, named Kat, and I'll link to her review in the description box, she wrote a very funny and truthful, I agree with most of the stuff that she says, even though she gave it a much lower grade than I, about the book, so I'll link to that. So, overall, I liked it. I think it was really worth checking out. And tomorrow I will be trying to put up the review of Wildthorn and The Duff. Time down.